Hare Krishna. Dishta, the mic is. Hare Krishna. Oh yeah, it's. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamuna Tiravana Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Together. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet nashtaprayesva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Hare Krishna. So today we will start a new chapter in second canto, which is chapter number 6, titled The Purusha Shukta Confirmed. But before that, let's do a quick recap of chapter 5. Does anyone remember what we discussed? Any takeaway, any main points that you remember from chapter 5? Yes, Dinatharani. Brahma's and Narada's conversation.
Yeah.
About?
So Narada was inquiring from, this is loud. Narada was inquiring from Lord Brahma, and he's saying like, okay, so basically, are you God? And Brahma, for this chapter, he's saying, I'm not God. I do create this material world, but those who think that I'm supreme are in ignorance, and actually Krishna is the one who's giving me all this power. And then he gave a kind of a little recap on his process of creating the universe.
Yes. So in the previous verse, like the Shudyumna and Dinatharani explained, Narada asks a bunch of questions to Brahma, and then Brahma establishes the supremacy of Lord Krishna, Lord Narayan, as the primary creator, and then he explains his own process of creation, the secondary creation. And he explains in the previous last class, we heard how the 4 Varnas come from the body of the Lord, and we discussed on the 4 Varnas. Now, in this chapter, we will discuss Purusha Shukta, where Brahma further explains the Virat form, the Virat Purusha of the Lord. We will read translations for verses 1 to 16, and then we will focus on verse number 1. So if you could take turns and read translations.
Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people.
His 2 nostrils are the generating centers of our breathing and of all other airs. His smelling powers generate the Asvini Kumara demigods and all kinds of medicinal herbs, and his breathing energies produce different kinds of fragrance.
His eyes are the generating centers of all kinds of forms, and they glitter and illuminate. His eyeballs are like the sun and the heavenly planets. His ears hear from all sides and are receptacles for all the Vedas, and his sense of hearing is the generating center of the sky and of all kinds of sound.
His bodily surface is the breeding ground for the active principle of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin, like the moving air, is a generating center for all kinds of sense of touch and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifice.
The hairs on his body are the cause of all vegetation, particularly of those trees which are required as ingredients for sacrifice. The hairs on his head and face are reservoirs for the clouds, and his nails are the breeding ground of electricity, stones, and iron ores.
The Lord's arms are the productive fields of the great demigods and other leaders of the living entities who protect the general mass.
Thus, the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. His lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear.
From the Lord's genitals originate water, semen, generatives, reigns in the procreators. His genitals are the cause of a pleasure that counteracts the distress of begetting.
O Narada, the evacuating outlet of the universal form of the Lord is the abode of the controlling deity of death, Mitra, and the evacuating hole and rectum of the Lord is the place of envy, misfortune, death, hell, etc.
The back of the Lord is the place of all kinds of frustration and ignorance, as well as for immortality. From his veins flow the great rivers and rivulets, and on his bones are stacked the great mountains.
The impersonal feature of the Lord is the abode of great oceans, and his belly is the resting place for the materially annihilated living entities. His heart is the abode of the subtle material bodies of living beings. Thus, it is known by the intelligent class of men.
Also, the consciousness of that great personality is the abode of religious principles. Mine, yours, and those of the four bachelors, Sanaka, Sanatan, Sanat Kumara, and Sanandana. That consciousness is also the abode of truth and transcendental knowledge.
Beginning from me, Brahma, down to you and Bhava, Shiva, all the great sages who were born before you, the demigods, the demons, the nagas, the human beings, the birds, the beasts, as well as the reptiles, etc., and all phenomenal manifestations of the universes, namely the planets, stars, asteroids, luminaries, lightning, thunder, and the inhabitants of the different planetary systems, namely the Gandharvas, Apsaras, Yakshas, Rakshas, Bhutaganas, Uragas, Pasus, Pitas, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, Charanas, and all other different varieties of living entities, including the birds, beasts, trees, and everything that be, are all covered by the universal form of the Lord at all times, namely past, present, and future, although he is transcendental to all of them, eternally existing in a form not exceeding 9 inches.
You can go on verse number 1. Brahmovacha Vacham Vanirmukham Kshetram Chandasam Saptadhatava Havya Kavyamritananam Jihva Sarva Rasasya Cha. Please repeat. Brahmavacha Vacham Vanirmukham Kshetram Chandasam Saptadhatava Havya Kavyamritananam Jihva Sarva Rasasya Cha. Brahmavacha Vacham Vanirmukham Kshetram Chandasam Saptadhatava Brahmavacha Vacham Vanirmukham Kshetram Chandasam sapta datava Havya khavya mritanana Jihva sarva rasasya cha Brahma vacha Vacham vane mukham kshetram Chandasam sapta dhatava Havya khavya mritanana Jihva sarva rasasya cha. Word for word together, please. Brahma uvacha, Lord Brahma of the voice, Vahane of fire, Mukham the mouth, Kshetram the generating center, Chandasam of the Vedic hymns such as Gayatri, Sapta 7, Dhatavaha skin and 6 other layers, Havya Kavya offerings for the demigods and the forefathers, Amrita food for human beings, Annanam of all sorts of foodstuffs, Jiva the tongue, Sarva all, Rasahicha of all delicates. Cha also. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people. Can someone please read the purport?
The opulences of the universal form of the Lord are described herein. It is said that his mouth is the generating center of all kinds of voices, and its controlling deity is the fire demigod, and his skin and other 6 layers of bodily construction are the representative generating centers of the 7 kinds of Vedic hymns, like the Gayatri. Gayatri is the beginning of all Vedic mantras, and it is explained that in the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. Since the generating centers are different parts of the universal form of the Lord, and since the form of the Lord is transcendental to the material creation, it is to be understood that the voice, the tongue, the skin, etc., suggest that the Lord, in his transcendental form, is not without them. The material voice, or the energy of taking in foodstuff, is generated originally from the Lord. Such actions are but perverted reflections of the original reservoirs. The transcendental situation is not without spiritual variegatedness. In this spiritual world, all the perverted forms of material variegatedness are fully represented in their original spiritual identity. The only difference is that material activities are contaminated by the 3 modes of material nature, whereas the potencies in the spiritual world are all pure because they are engaged in the unalloyed transcendental loving service of the Lord. In the spiritual world, the Lord is the sublime enjoyer of everything, and the living entities there are all engaged in his transcendental loving service without any contamination of the modes of material nature. The activities in the spiritual world are without any of the difficulties of the material world, but there is no question of impersonal voidness on the spiritual platform, as suggested by the impersonalist. No devotional service is defined in the devotional service is defined in the Narada Pancharatra as followed.
Tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate.
Originally, since all the senses are produced of the Lord's reservoir of senses, the sensual activities of the material world are to be purified by the process of devotional service, and thus the perfection of life can be attained simply by purifying the present position of our material activities. And the purifying process begins from the stage of being liberated from the conception of different designations. Every living entity is engaged in some sort of service, either for the self, or for the family, or for the society, country, etc. But unfortunately, all such services are rendered due to material attachment. The attachments of the material affinity may be simply changed to the service of the Lord, and thus the treatment of being freed from material attachment begins automatically. The process of liberation is therefore easier through devotional service than by any other methods. For in the Bhagavad Gita 12.5, it is said that one is subjected to various kinds of tribulations if one is impersonally attached. Klesho
Kleshodikatarasthesham avyaktasaktachetasam. Thank you. Om Jnanathimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. These verses that we just read, verses 1 to 16, they basically they're describing the universe, the different elements of these universe, and how it relates, comparing it with the body, basically, of the Supreme Lord. His limbs, his mouth, his eyes, and so on. There's a very popular modern conception where a lot of people say that the universe, they personalize the universe. They say that, the universe will support you, or like read your thoughts in the universe, and the universe will, respond, or like manifest something, and the universe will help you create that or achieve that. So people generally tend to personify the universe as a person, as if it was a person. And that's what Brahma did 5,000 years ago, or rather, so many years ago. When he was talking with Narada Muni, he's personifying the universe, comparing it with the body of Sri Vishnu. This kind of analysis of the universe, breaking down it into and then comparing it with the body, is basically Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is where you analytically break down the elements of this universe and then study those elements and then try to it's a bottom to top approach where you deal with what you have available, the material creation, you break it down and then you try to approach the Supreme. That is the Sankhya philosophy. And so the Virat Purusha, Prabhupada explains in the previous chapter that this Virat Rupa, or this universal form of the Lord, is basically, it's an imaginary form. It's not a true, eternal form of the Lord. It is imaginary and it is temporary. Because ultimately the understanding of the universal form is based on this material creation, and this material creation is temporary. It is not eternal, and therefore all these comparisons are also temporary. It's like for certain people it helps to imagine that, okay, these mountains, these rivers, these forests, these senses, these bodies, these planets, they are all a cosmic whole, or a cosmic one being. And therefore the name of the chapter, Purusha Shukta, means, Shukta means hymns, prayers, and Purusha means, this Purusha is not referring to the body of Krishna, the eternal Purusha, but this Purusha is basically the cosmic whole, or the one cosmic being. And so therefore Purusha Shukta means prayers, or the descriptions of this one cosmic being, which this chapter, or at least half of this chapter, mainly talks about. But what we really understand here is that Brahma is describing secondary creation, that how Lord is the primary creator and he is the secondary creator, and that all these descriptions, that all these limbs of the Lord actually provide the potencies using which Brahma then creates. And therefore, in the Lagu Bhagavatamrit, it is actually mentioned that the universal form is actually Brahma's form. It is not Vishnu's form. It says that the universal form, the Virat Purush, is actually Brahma's form because it completely consists of the secondary creation. But however, because the potency is of Vishnu, using which Brahma creates, that is why it is, it can still be understood as Vishnu's form. And therefore, when we meditate also on the Virat Purusha, the Virat form of the Lord, it still benefits us, it still purifies us because it awakens a thought of Vishnu. Does anyone remember where there's another place where there's a description of the Virat Purusha or the Virat form? Yeah. 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita where Krishna reveals his Virat form. And then what was Arjuna's reaction after seeing the Virat form? Very scared. Yeah. Please go back to normal. Yeah. He was very confused, horrified, scared, terrified, all negative emotions. You know, it was just imagine the entire universe with all its planets, galaxies, with all its variety, so these 16 verses are not even describing a small fraction of the actual Virat Purusha. These 16 verses are actually just giving a very little tinge, a very little idea. But just imagine the whole universe with all its variety, if we see a representation in front of our eyes with all that, grandeur, then how terrifying or how confusing would it be? And that was Arjuna's experience that he saw. And it also includes past, present, and future. It doesn't only include the material aspect, the matter aspect. It includes subtle things. It includes the elements. It includes blood, flesh, ego, intelligence, mind, and then past, present, and future. So seeing all of that, actually perceiving that, it just threw off Arjuna, and he was like, "Please go back to your form. I want to see your two-handed form. This is a horrible form that you just displayed." Therefore, we understand that for some people it may be helpful, especially maybe for atheists or for new practitioners or for people who are too much very materialistic, for whom it is very difficult to conceive a personal, loving, beautiful form of the Lord. For them, it may help to see the universe as a supreme being, or as the cause, or as something worth an object of reverence. For them, the universe is something. So maybe for them it helps. But for devotees, it's a little horrifying. It's not a good experience of imagining or meditating upon the universal form. And therefore, Prabhupada actually in the purport, he's directly hinting towards that devotional service or bhakti is what should be the focus, and one should try to develop direct devotional service rather than going through these processes and wasting their time. The last word or the last line in Srila Prabhupada's purport was where he says that he quotes Bhagavad Gita, that other processes can be really difficult, especially impersonalism, which is basically meditation on the universal form is impersonalism, because we are not directly conceiving the personal form of the Lord. So it can be a really difficult process. Why do you think can it be a difficult process to to go through this impersonal process of meditating on the universal form. Janaki.
It's already very difficult to focus our attention, and so if
Mm.
we don't have something to focus our attention on, it's very difficult.
Mhm.
Because it might take a long time to get to Krishna consciousness,
Mm.
since we have like a lot to focus or to be unfocused, you
Yes.
know, of the real meaning of life.
Yes, Nanda Brajapuri.
The process of bhakti yoga is so relatable
Mm.
because it's within our everyday experience,
Mhm.
relationships with others, and acting. We're working towards something. So when we take these bhakti yogas towards working towards for Krishna, and that everything we do is an offering to Him, and through our personal relationships, it's very simple. If we start to do things like Ashtanga yoga or breathing systems, these things aren't so much part of our daily life. So we have to basically learn a whole different thing and go against our nature to start to move towards Krishna.
Mm.
And so it can be like, yeah, that's my thought and why it could be very difficult. It's not really part of our natural
Mm.
process or natural daily life.
Yeah, it's really difficult to concentrate, to be attentive, or to focus on this imaginary form, and it's against our nature, because our nature, as we understand, is to be engaged in service, or to do something, to be actively engaged in service, the loving propensity. And it's hard to love this impersonal whole. It's like we have limited capacity as humans, and if you think of the whole universe, it's really difficult to expand your love to the whole universe, or like try to objectify or direct your love or your serving propensity towards this universal figure. So it's a little non-conducive for devotees. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's true. That's why the process that we understand is that you love Krishna, and when you love Krishna, then automatically your circle of compassion expands to other living entities, because you're watering the root of the tree. But kind of trying to deal with the universal form is like kind of dealing with all the branches and the leaves and the fruits of the tree individually, and then that's more difficult than rather just focusing on the source. And the universal form is actually kind of an insult to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it is only a tinge of His actual potency, of His actual power. And therefore, later in this chapter, in verses 43 to 45, Lord Brahma then concludes. He says, I myself, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, great generators of living beings like Daksha and Prajapati, yourselves, Narada and the Kumaras, heavenly demigods like Indra and Chandra, the leaders of the Bhurloka planets, the leaders of the earthly planets, the leaders of the lower planets, the leaders of the Gandharva planets, the leaders of the Vidyadhara planets, the leaders of the Charanaloka planets, the leaders of the Yakshas, Rakshasas and Uragas, the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, Satans, jinn, Kushmandas, great aquatics, great beasts and great birds, etc. In other words, anything and everything which is exceptionally possessed of power, opulence, mental and perceptual dexterity, strength, forgiveness, beauty, modesty, opulence, and breeding, whether in form or formless. Brahma is saying all these beings, be it anyone, it may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They are only a fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord. So all these amazing, big, wonderful things, personalities, creations, Brahma is saying they may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They are only a fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord. So therefore it is insulting to the Supreme Lord to think that this wonderful creation is actually, this is the truth, or this is be all and end all of spiritual reality, because it is nothing but a tiny insignificant fragment of the complete potency. Just imagine the whole material creation with its unlimited universes, and our universe is actually one of the smallest universes. Our Brahma has 4 heads, and then there are Brahmas with 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 1008. It's like enormously, absolutely huge and inconceivable universes exist in this cosmic creation, which we cannot even begin to imagine the kind of variety and opulence that is present in that universe. And this entire material manifestation with all its universes is only 1/4 of the total existence. And then the spiritual reality is 3/4. So all the planets in the spiritual world, all the realities, the realms, the variety, the beings, all the wonderful creations and opulences in the spiritual world is even much, much more than the material world. And so therefore, thinking that this tiny, insignificant, useless universe is actually the Supreme Lord is meaningless. Therefore Brahma, even after describing the universe and describing how it relates to the body of the Lord, he says, no, it is useless. Anything wonderful that you see is actually a tiny fragment of the potency of the Lord. And so therefore if we feel attracted in this world to anything wonderful, we are very easily attracted and bewildered by the opulences or the potencies that exist in this world. Someone may be very beautiful, very physically attractive. Someone may have a lot of physical strength, bodily power. Someone may be extremely intelligent. Someone may be very renounced, a great ascetic. Things like this. So someone may be extremely wealthy, Elon Musk and people like that. And we as humans, we are so easily attracted and so easily bewildered by these tiny temporary opulences that we lose ourselves in the flow or in the process of I and mine, in the process of sense gratification, in the process of pursuing these opulences or these potencies, or achieving that, or getting that, or enjoying these tiny potencies, that we forget that this is absolutely nothing in this grand scheme of things. It's absolutely meaningless. All these attractions that we have, that we feel are so important and are so much close to our heart, all these things that we are attached to, we may feel like, and we put so much energy and time and effort to pursue this, but actually Lord Brahma is saying that it's useless, it's meaningless. It's like when you approach a king, and then the king of the whole world, when you approach him and the king says, ask whatever you want, I want to give you something, and you say, oh king, if you really want to give me, then please forgive 1 year of taxes for me. Let me not pay taxes for 1 year. Or please give me a big house. Please give me a big farm. Or like, you ask all these things and the king will laugh. He laughs. He said, I am the king of the whole world, and I can give you so much more, and you ask for forgiveness of taxes. You are asking me for a farm, for a house. It's like, oh, so significant. And therefore, when we approach the Supreme Lord, all his potencies and all that he's capable of and all that he can give, and then we ask that, oh Lord, please give me some beauty, please give me some money, please give me some strength, some knowledge, all these potencies, please give me someone to enjoy with someone who has these potencies. And we're asking for broken pieces of glass, like Narottam Das Thakur says. He says, we're asking for this insignificant broken pieces of glass, which can actually, what does broken piece of glass, what can it do? It can cut you. And so he's saying that this is what we ask for, rather than asking for a diamond, which the Lord is capable of. We forget the gems that he can give us. And therefore he's saying, Janiya, Shuniya, Vishakhainu, that knowingly I have drunk poison, because knowing that what the Lord is capable of, he can give me pure loving devotional service by which I can live a life of bliss, and I can be situated in my eternal position of a blissful living entity in relation with the Lord and in relation with all the other associates of the Lord. But still, I know this and I still ask for something that is not good for me. So knowingly I'm drinking poison. So yeah, that's the conclusion of this kind of meditation on the universal form, that it's rather better to think about and to focus on and to meditate on the personal form of the Lord, chant his names, try to directly relate to the Lord, develop that relationship with the Lord and his devotees, directly engage in the processes of devotional service rather than trying to go through this very difficult and meaningless path of impersonalism or impersonal meditation. And even if we think that, how can, as devotees, because this is in the Bhagavatam, if we feel this is important, how can we relate with it as devotees? Then I feel personally that this whole description is nothing but a symptom of love, or an experience of love, that when you really love someone, and if that person is not with you, then what do is that you keep objects that are related to them, their clothes, or the places that they spend their time, things like that. You go to their places, or you keep the objects close to you that they've used. So, these things help you relate to and remember your beloved. And so therefore, all this beautiful creation, if it helps us remember the Supreme Lord, our beloved, that all this beautiful mountains and valleys and the sun and the moon, if we see at these things and we think that, oh, my beloved is so beautiful, we think of Krishna, then that will be a success. Then that has some meaning. Thank you very much. If are there any questions or comments?
You were talking about Sankhya philosophy earlier, and I've always been a little bit confused on exactly what is Sankhya philosophy. Do we like it? Do we not like it? Because you mentioned that it's going from the ground up, and that sounds, at least we always hear, our knowledge should be descending. It shouldn't be ascending. But then we also see Kapila is teaching Sankhya philosophy, and he's a devotee, and it's in the Bhagavatam. So this seems like it's an example of empiric knowledge. So is Sankhya philosophy something that we like or something that we don't like?
There's two versions of the Sankhya philosophy. One Sankhya philosophy is that the materialist scientists do, or that also some philosophers, it's like just seeing what is around us, and then without any preconception or without actual faith and then you just take what is available and you break it down, like the scientists, they break down the chemicals, elements, they go to space explorations and things like that to find some meaning. So trying to find some meaning by gradually breaking down the material elements is one type of Sankhya philosophy. That is discouraged. As devotees, we don't like that, because we understand scientifically that matter cannot lead to spirit. Spirit does not come from matter. And no matter how much you break down matter or how much you explore matter, you will not reach at spirit, because they are two completely different realities. However, another Sankhya philosophy that devotees talk about, that Brahma is talking about, or that Kapila talks about, is dealing with the material elements with the faith or with the understanding that, directly connecting it with the Lord. Like, okay, the elements come from the Lord, and now we understand that. And now we deal with the elements, we break down the elements, or we meditate upon this material aspect with the goal to reach the Lord. So devotees have that faith. Devotees understand that, okay, there is this supreme being from which everything comes, and then now they're using everything to approach that supreme being. So it's not atheistic in nature. The first version is atheistic in nature, because they start from an understanding that, okay, there is no God, we will see where we go. And therefore most of them don't reach anywhere. They spend their lives analyzing these elements, and then they don't reach a conclusive goal or a conclusive end. So
So I guess I have kind of like two more smaller questions just based off that. One is it still empirical? Is it still ascending knowledge, or is it descending? As in, like, it's coming from authorities, or is it we're breaking down these things with the goal of reaching the Supreme? And two, is Sankhya philosophy something that we do in ISKCON? Or do we not do Sankhya at all?
I would say again, it is empirical, but it is not absolutely empirical in the sense that we completely rely on our empirical testing or evidences. When devotees, the second version of the Sankhya philosophy that devotees perform, or that transcendentalists perform, is empirical in the sense that they understand that this will lead to the Lord, and they just, it's just a difficult process that they choose of going through matter, but then it is empirical in the sense that not that they will discover they rely on discovering something new, but rather than understanding the goal and then trying to connect it with the goal. So in that sense. However, in ISKCON, do we do Sankhya? In ISKCON, the focus is directly on Bhakti Yoga. In ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada mentions that, and based on the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that one should not waste their time in other processes. One should directly engage in Bhakti Yoga, in the 9 processes of devotional service, hearing, chanting, and so on. And because they are the most potent, and in this age especially, chanting, Sankirtan Yagya, is the most potent process of spiritual realization. So one should not waste their time in other processes. So therefore in ISKCON, we don't encourage other processes, even though devotees may engage based on their proclivities. However, as a common principle, we understand that we must directly engage in devotional service, because that will lead to the result in the most favorable way.
I have a question on that, or maybe a point, I'm not sure. So Sankhya literally means to count, right? So it's basically a material philosophy. So, and what you're saying is that one is atheistic, it's only material, and then one is used for spiritual purposes. And because Sankhya is, you're literally just counting and observing like the elements in the world, we use Sankhya philosophy anyways, because this is how we just progress in the material world. So it's just a matter of how you use it, not whether it's good or bad. It's just how do you collect knowledge from the world and use it spiritually. Would that be true?
I think yes. It also reminds me that the way we use Sankhya philosophy is in the form of yukta vairagya, or like in the form of using the material elements. As we don't reject the material elements and say it is all false, and we don't go to the forest and just meditate on Krishna, but we deal with Sankhya in the way that we deal with all the material elements available and try to connect it with the Lord. So that is what we do. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.